Story 1. He texted me things I only thought, not said, not posted. This happened to me in 2019. At the time, I was living alone in a small third-floor studio in Minneapolis, above a laundromat that closed by 9 p.m. most nights. I'd recently gone through a rough stretch. Health scare, job loss, a friend betrayal that felt worse than a breakup. That apartment was supposed to be my reset. It was quiet, clean, and most importantly, mine. Most nights I stayed in. I wasn't depressed, not exactly, just unhooked from things. I had groceries, a battered couch, and decent Wi-Fi. I kept the blinds closed. I rarely turned on the lights after 10. It felt like a space outside of time, someplace no one could find me. But someone did. The first text came late, around 2:41 a.m. to be exact. It was from an unknown number, just 3 words. Don't do it. I stared at it for a while. It was weird, but vague enough to mean nothing. Could have been a wrong number. I deleted it, locked my phone, and tried to sleep. But the next day I got another. This time, so that's your plan? Just avoid everything? There was no history, no context, just a cold, observing tone that felt undeserved. I ignored it. I didn't reply. But the next one came only hours later. If you're going to lie to yourself, at least be interesting about it. That's when I started to feel it. This itch behind my eyes. Like I just walked into a room I wasn't supposed to see. I didn't post anything online that day. I hadn't called anyone. I hadn't spoken out loud. But somehow, whoever this was, they were referring to something real. Because the truth was, I had been avoiding something. Something I wasn't ready to admit to myself. Something I hadn't even put into words. But this stranger had phrased it perfectly. Still, I didn't respond. I blocked the number. 2 days passed without another text. That's when I got curious, or maybe desperate. I thought, if they know what I'm thinking, I'll feed them a lie. So I sat on my bed and silently thought of a plan. A fake one. I imagined buying a bus ticket to Chicago, visualized it completely, what I'd pack, what terminal I'd use. I spent 10 minutes rehearsing it like a performance, but I never spoke it out loud. Not once. 30 minutes later, my new number buzzed. You lied to yourself. Try again. I sat there, phone in hand, mouth dry. This wasn't a prank. No app could do this. No friend could guess this. This was something else. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark with the phone face down beside me. I didn't touch it again until morning, but I kept thinking, what else do they know? I stopped replying altogether. I deleted all my social apps, threw my SIM card in the trash, and bought a prepaid phone at a 24-hour Walgreens across town. I didn't add any contacts. I didn't use it for anything except emergencies. Still, the texts found me. They started showing up as system notifications, gray text bubbles from unknown senders, always short, always cutting. That old couch wasn't brown, it was maroon. You always forget that. You cried under the piano when your uncle died, remember? No one heard you say help that night in 2013, but I did. They weren't guesses. These were details I hadn't thought of in years. Specific, intimate moments even my parents didn't know. My mouth used to tremble when I tried to talk about them. Some I'd actively tried to forget. And yet, now, they were being handed back to me like photos I didn't remember taking. Once, they mentioned a specific intersection from my childhood, the alley behind my elementary school, where I used to walk alone when I was 7. The street had been torn up for years now, but the message said, you used to count cracks in the sidewalk there. It helped you calm down. You stopped at 47. Another time they wrote, you sleep better when the fridge is running, but you pretend you don't notice the silence when it stops. I moved. I told no one. I didn't even pack everything, just a duffel bag, some clothes, and a few photos I didn't want to lose. I left the apartment at 4 a.m., boarded a Greyhound without telling my landlord, and rented a week-to-week room in another state under a fake name. Still, 3 nights after moving in, I got another message. Your new shower pressure's worse, but the water's softer. Small trade. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. This wasn't surveillance. This wasn't spyware or cameras or someone watching from across the street. This was inside. And worst of all, the tone had changed. They weren't warning me anymore. They were narrating. I stayed off the grid for months. No bank activity, no social media, no forwarding address. I stopped using my phone entirely, left it powered down in the glove compartment of an old rental I never returned. I walked instead of drove, paid cash for everything. I started reading about things I didn't used to care about: surveillance theory, neural conditioning, predictive algorithms. Turns out there's a phenomenon some psychologists call suggested memory haunting. It's a blend of intrusive recall and external reinforcement, a targeted illusion that convinces you someone knows your mind, not just because they're watching, but because they've mapped your responses over time. Micro-reactions, inhalation timing. Keyword triggers. It creates an artificial intimacy, the illusion that they've been with you all along. I kept wondering, what if they had? Maybe it wasn't recent. Maybe this had started years ago. Maybe they'd been collecting, waiting. Maybe every anonymous post I made in college, every email draft I deleted, every typed thought I never sent, maybe all of it had been mirrored somewhere else. There was a word I read in a case study: residency. It's when someone doesn't just observe you, they move into you. I couldn't stop thinking about that, so I disconnected completely. No phone, no laptop. I took a job at a cash-only bakery in a small town no one had ever heard of. Rented a cabin from a woman who didn't even ask for ID. Just a handshake and a $500 deposit. I kept to myself. No lights after dusk, no paper trail, and it was working for a while. Until I woke up one morning to find something under my pillow. A single note, no envelope, just torn from a notepad I didn't own. My handwriting, neat, precise, not forged. Mine. 4 words. I love watching you think. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the words, reading them over and over. I looked around the cabin. The window was shut. The door locked from the inside. No sign of anyone else. But the message didn't require evidence. It already knew. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for hours, trying to remember writing that note, trying to convince myself I did. Trying to build a memory that would make sense, but nothing came. Just silence. Just the sense that whatever had started wasn't going to stop. It didn't need to follow me. It was already here, inside. Story 2. There was a lock on the outside of my bedroom door, but I live alone. This happened to me in 2021. Back then, I just moved into a converted duplex in a quiet residential block in Columbus, Ohio. I worked freelance in IT, which meant I spent most days and nights alone in my unit. A narrow 1-bedroom with a small kitchen and a carpeted hallway that led to the bedroom. I liked it that way. It felt manageable, safe, mine. The house itself was older, I think built in the 1950s, but the inside had been updated. Vinyl flooring in the kitchen, cheap recessed lighting, faux marble in the bathroom. The only part that still felt original was the bedroom. Yellowed walls, squeaky floorboards, and a thick wooden door that shut with an audible thud. I didn't mind. The room was big, clean. It faced the backyard. I could sleep in silence. The first time I noticed the lock, I was brushing my teeth. It was late, maybe close to 2 a.m., and I was on autopilot. I walked past the bedroom door on my way to the bathroom, and for some reason, the sight of the outside knob caught my attention. Not the knob itself, but what was above it. A sliding bolt, like the kind you'd use to lock something from the outside. It wasn't shiny. It looked old, installed with 3 mismatched screws and painted over sloppily, like someone had tried to blend it in. I stood there for a minute just staring at it. The thing was, I'd walked past that door hundreds of times. I'd never seen a bolt, not once. I opened and closed it, ran my fingers across the wood. The bolt worked. It slid easily. It was real. But I couldn't remember it being there yesterday. That's what got me. I didn't panic. I didn't even touch it again that night. I just stared at it. Then I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my camera roll, trying to find any photo I'd taken that might show the door from the outside. I found one, a blurry shot I took on move-in day, trying to show my parents the layout. In that photo, the door was open, but I could see the top of it, no bolt. I kept scrolling. Another photo. From a month later, this one showed the hallway with the door clearly shut, and the bolt was there. Same bolt, same placement, but I didn't remember it at all. I clicked back and forth between the two photos. Same door, but in one, it was clean. In the other, locked from the outside. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I started checking everything. I pulled open drawers I hadn't touched in weeks, measured the distance from the bed to the window, scanned every surface, every outlet, every light switch. And then something else hit me, the wallpaper. I knew it wasn't real wallpaper, just that textured stick-on stuff, but it had always seemed faded, slightly bubbled near the corners, old. But now, it was pristine, too pristine. The seams were tighter, the pattern more aligned. There was no yellowing near the ceiling, no faint water stain in the corner where I used to hang a jacket. I kept looking. The dresser I'd bought second-hand, the scuff on the front drawer was gone, the mirror above the desk, a different frame, the old metal vent cover, replaced, same size, same shape, but newer screws, different pattern. That's when it started to dawn on me. This wasn't just a faulty memory. Someone had changed my space. The next morning, I bought a camera. Nothing fancy, just a cheap Wi-Fi-enabled cam that could record motion-triggered video. I angled it toward the hallway, facing the bedroom door. I told myself it was for peace of mind, that I'd wake up the next day, check the footage, and laugh at myself. That night, I left the door open a crack. I didn't fall asleep right away. I lay there watching the hallway, listening. Nothing happened, or at least nothing I could hear. The next morning, I opened the app. The camera had recorded 7 clips between 2:13 a.m. and 5:46 a.m. I opened the first one. It showed the hallway, empty. Then just before the clip ended, a shadow, not crossing the frame, emerging into it. The next clip picked up a few seconds later. This time the figure was clearer. Someone was standing in the hallway, back turned, completely still. They were maybe 6 feet tall, wearing what looked like dark clothing, no shoes, no sound, just standing. I skipped ahead. Next clip, same figure, still facing away, still unmoving. 2 hours passed like that. At one point, they turned slightly, not toward the camera, not toward the door, just a subtle shift, enough to show the edge of a shoulder, a pale hand at their side, but never a face. I was frozen watching the footage. The hallway looked exactly like mine. The door was open the same way I'd left it. Then the last clip. The hallway was empty again. No footsteps, no exit. Just gone. I checked the front door. Still locked. Windows secured. No sign of anything disturbed. But when I walked into the bedroom, something hit me in the chest. Heat, the side of the bed I didn't sleep on. It was warm, the sheets rumpled, the pillow slightly indented, like someone had been lying there. I stood over it for minutes, unable to move. My ears rang. My body felt disconnected from itself. I didn't call the cops. What would I say? There was a person, but they left no trace, except for warmth. Instead, I changed the locks. I double-checked every window. I unplugged the camera. I didn't want more evidence. I just wanted it to stop. Weeks passed without incident. I didn't sleep well, but nothing else happened. I started reading articles, papers, case studies, anything that might explain what was going on. That's when I came across something called environmental remapping. Apparently, in rare cases, certain stalkers, usually with backgrounds in architecture or psychology, target victims by subtly altering their environments. Not in big ways, but small ones. 1 centimeter shifts, alternate versions of familiar objects, slight upgrades, slight downgrades, all designed to create cognitive fatigue, self-doubt. They called it gaslighting through space. The most effective perpetrators weren't seen, heard, or caught. They simply redecorated. And over time, the victim stops trusting their own perception. They stop reporting. They stop resisting. I didn't want to be that person, so I took action. One night, I grabbed a crowbar from the basement and ripped the bolt off the bedroom door. Wood splinters flew. The screws snapped. I tossed the whole thing in a trash bag and walked it a block away to a public dumpster. I packed a suitcase, checked into a cheap hotel off the interstate, left my phone powered off in the glove box of a stranger's car in a supermarket parking lot, just in case. I thought I was done. I thought I'd escaped. 2 nights later, I was brushing my teeth in the hotel bathroom when I noticed the closet door, a small wooden panel next to the TV. I hadn't opened it yet. Something about it felt wrong. I walked over, opened it. Empty. Just a steel bar and a shelf. Then I closed it again, slowly, like I wasn't supposed to look behind it. And that's when I saw it. A lock, installed on the outside of the closet door. Same style, same height, same mismatched screws. I stared at it for so long my knees started to shake. It was identical. I opened the door again, hoping I was wrong, hoping I'd imagined it. But no. When I closed it the second time, the lock was still there, not loose, not temporary, installed. I didn't sleep in that room. I left the hotel before checkout and drove until dawn. I didn't look back. Sometimes I wonder if the lock is following me, not physically, but in the way a pattern follows. In the way a presence embeds itself inside your sense of space. Because even now, sometimes, when I close a door, I listen for the click of something sliding shut behind me. From the outside. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. She wrote letters from my future, and they were right. This started in October of 2022. At the time, I was living alone in a rental cottage near the edge of Lake Keuka in upstate New York. It was one of those off-season deals, an empty summer property I found through a quiet friend of a friend listing. The kind you pay for in cash, no lease, just a handshake and a key under the mat. I was recovering from a divorce. Not tragic, just slow and silent. The kind that leaves you questioning who you've been more than who you lost. The lake felt like a good place for that. Quiet, detached, nobody asking questions. The cottage was small. Living room, kitchenette, single bedroom, and a desk in the corner where I kept my laptop. I didn't use it much. I spent most days walking, reading, listening to the wind. And then one morning, I found the letter. It wasn't in the mailbox or slipped under the door. It was already on my desk, resting square in the center, unsealed. My name was written on the front in narrow block letters. Michael. I opened it. There was no greeting, no date, just 6 sentences. You've been dreaming of drowning, but it isn't the water you're afraid of. It's the silence before you go under. Stop looking for where the noise starts. It starts in you. You will forget the code soon. Let it happen. I read it twice, then again. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Not messy, just careful, like it had been copied from somewhere. The ink was dark blue, and the paper smelled faintly of dust and cedar. I looked around the room, half expecting someone to knock or laugh or say gotcha, but nothing happened. I didn't know what to make of it, so I left it on the desk and went for a walk. That night, I had a dream. I was waist deep in the lake, facing the shore, with fog curling around my knees. Everything was silent. No wind, no birds, no waves, just stillness. I turned to go back to the cottage, but when I looked behind me, there was no land, just more lake. Endless. When I woke up, my mouth was dry and my shirt was damp with sweat. I didn't remember dreaming of water before. I hadn't told anyone about my sleep habits, but the letter had known. 2 days later, another appeared. This one was shorter. You'll hear a knock that doesn't ask to be answered. Wait 10 seconds before you move. You'll understand why. I sat with that letter for hours. I didn't hear any knock that day, or the next, but the third night, just past 3 a.m., and I was lying in bed when I heard it. One knock, then another, heavy, deliberate. I started to get up instinctively, then remembered the letter. So I waited. 10 full seconds. When I opened the door, no one was there, but wedged beneath the welcome mat was a knife, small, rusted, with a red cord wrapped around the hilt, the kind of thing that didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a message. I didn't tell anyone about the letters. Not because I thought I was crazy, but because I wasn't sure I wasn't. There's a difference. They kept appearing, always the same way. Folded, no envelope, center of the desk. No footprints, no sign of entry. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes while I was out for just a minute. Each one was precise, emotionally invasive. They didn't talk about events. They described internal states I hadn't fully arrived at yet. Things I hadn't said aloud. Doubts I hadn't admitted. Emotions that were building without my awareness. One letter read, "You will start watching your hands when you speak, not because you're guilty, but because you think you might be." And 3 days later, I caught myself doing exactly that, mid-conversation with a gas station cashier who'd asked how long I was staying in town. I began scanning everything in the house, looking for bugs, tracking mechanisms, voice recorders. Nothing. One afternoon, I pulled open the desk drawer to get a Post-it. I never stored much in there, just random pens, batteries, some receipts. But one pen caught my eye. It was black, metal-bodied, heavier than the others. I didn't remember buying it. I clicked it open. The ink was blue, same blue. I pulled out one of the letters and wrote next to it. The line matched. The pressure matched. Even the slight curve on the lowercase e looked identical. I tried writing a sentence from one of the old letters, just to compare, but I couldn't finish it. My hand locked up after the third word. I smelled the pen tip. The ink had a sharpness to it, like iron, like mold, like age. Old, in a way that didn't match anything I'd owned. I held the letter close. The paper felt warm in places, dry in others, like it had gone through some kind of heat or pressure. Out of impulse, I pulled open the narrow closet in the hallway, the one I never used, empty, except for a box I hadn't noticed before. Wooden, no label, no latch. Inside, 5 more letters, all unopened, all addressed to me. I didn't read them that day. I couldn't. They felt radioactive. That night I had another dream. Same lake, same silence, but this time someone was standing in the water with me, not looking at me, just beside me. When I turned to face them, I woke up, sweating, mouth dry. In my hand was the pen. I don't remember getting out of bed. I started researching compulsively. Psychological patterns, influence models, predictive behavioral loops. That's when I came across a term I hadn't seen before, suggestive convergence. The theory was buried in a forum thread by a doctoral student in behavioral neuroscience. According to him, it referred to a form of psychological stalking, not in the physical sense, but temporal. The idea was that a subject could be manipulated into converging toward predetermined states of being, not by force, but by suggestion, by implying certain outcomes in advance, but framing them in ways that sound like memory rather than prediction. It's not prophecy, it's orchestration. The stalker doesn't watch what you do. They shape what you'll do by convincing you that it's already happening, like rerouting your sense of time. I started keeping the letters in a box. I stopped reading them the day they appeared. I'd let a week pass before opening one, then 2 weeks. Eventually, I stopped opening them at all. But they didn't stop coming. One night, after returning from a 3-day trip into town, I found one taped to the bedroom door. For the first time, it was sealed. When I opened it, the letter was short, only one line. "You read this after you lock the door, but it's still open behind you." I stood there, gripping the paper. The front door was locked. I always locked it, but this sentence wasn't about the front. I turned, slowly, to face the hallway behind me. No one there, but the air felt wrong. heavier. I looked down at the letter again. The ink had bled slightly, as if it had absorbed moisture or heat. My hands were trembling. Then I heard it, a click, a soft, deliberate click from the bedroom door. It had locked from the inside. I walked to it, hand shaking, and turned the knob. It didn't budge. I tried again. Nothing. I stood there, breathing shallowly, listening. No footsteps, no voices. But behind the door, I could hear the faintest sound, like paper being folded or unfolded. I backed away, sat on the floor of the hallway, didn't move for hours. Eventually, I slept. I don't remember how. When I woke, the door was open. The letters were gone, all of them, even the sealed ones I hadn't opened yet. The desk was empty. The closet was empty. Even the pen was missing. Only one thing was left: a note. Taped to the ceiling directly above my bed. It read, "Now you'll write them." I haven't started yet, but some nights I wake up with words in my head. Not dreams, just sentences. Clear, present, familiar, like memories I haven't lived. And I keep thinking, if someone handed me a letter from a year from now, would I still open it? Or would I just do what it says, without question, without fear, just because it feels already done?